Once again, welcome to our weekly show, our weekly teaching. I'm Dr. Manganyi. I'm a PhD holder, I'm a social worker by profession, and taking from what I taught you or we spoke about last week we spoke about stigma, and I gave you about 3 if not 4 examples or scenarios on stigma. And many of the viewers and many of our followers, they've been talking back. They've been following us, and they said, these things you spoke about are happening. These things that you shared on are true and are real, other than just being scenarios. And we would so much like to hear from you, Doctor, how what will be your advice? How does one successfully deal with stigma? How does one open up to get assistance? Because people, as people, we were traumatized by all these things that you shared on, Doctor. So today, I thought, because I'm not the kind of person that would just speak about something, run away and not to come back and reflect on these things, and and give people an opportunity to listen to me, to hear what my advices would be in terms of how to go about in resolving or finding assistance or dealing with these situations that are reflected on. Remember, the first scenario that I painted was about a girl child who had a dad who was in prison, and the girl was performing well at school, and the school wanted to honor the child, and they have wanted parents to be part, and the girl feel conflicted in that the parent was not at home and was in prison. And and in one of the visits that the child made to prison to see the father, discuss with the father that at school they would want you to be part of an event where they would want to honor me, but how do I go about, because you are not home, and and how do I disclose that you are in prison? This was going to hurt me. It's gonna people would begin to look at me differently, and so on and so forth. And my advice, in dealing with something of this nature would be very simple and straightforward. There's no need that in this scenario, there's no need that for the girl child to stress. Neither is there a need for the father to be worried, to be want to be released from prison so that he can go and be part of of an occasion. A simple solution to this would be, this man is not the only person in his family. It would be possible, and we have seen this happening in most cases, most of the time, that instead of this father having to worry about his position being in prison, he could just get a family representative. It could be his elder brother, younger brother, could be an uncle to the child, to go and represent the family. And this is acceptable by by any standards that, you know, this man is also a parent to this child. He might not necessarily be a biological father, but his presence, you know, if he comes or if he goes with this child to represent the child and make, you know, a presentation indicating that, you know, unfortunately the girl's father could not make it to the occasion, but he is there representing the family. That is acceptable, and this will make the child comfortable, and it wouldn't necessarily lead the child to disclose any, you know, of the information that the child is not comfortable about. So, you know, it might look very serious, and you feel, you know, as a parent you needed to be there, but there is always a way around it. That's how, you know, in a way, you know, serial number one could have been addressed, and, you know, in a way, you know, the stigma that was associated with this matter would be minimized, and maybe life would continue as normal. And there was a second scenario that I labored on. You remember I spoke about it also had to do with a girl child who happened to be pregnant. And on investigation, it was discovered that, you know, the father of this girl child was responsible for the pregnancy. And this is becoming very common in our families, in most communities. You have, you know, a girl child who is pregnant of an uncle, a girl child who is pregnant of a brother, you know, a girl child who is pregnant of a close relative in the family. And, you know, families, you know, sit around, try to find a solution to this kind of a challenge. And, you know, what often happens, you know, families, in most cases, in cases that I've dealt with, I've seen, they end up choosing to sacrifice the girl child, you know, to save the family, to ensure that, you know, this matter doesn't get out of, you know, of the family. It doesn't even, it doesn't have to be known, you know. So in their own thinking, you know, they are protecting their family. But you ask yourself, which family is being protected here? The child has been violated, molested, and the repercussions or the end results are very, very dire, because, you know, if you meet an adult today who has suffered molestation as a child, you know, they still bear the scars. So you ask yourself, protection, who's protection, who's protected? Maybe again, you may have to ask, if there's anyone who needs to be protected here, shouldn't it be the child? If there's an adult and a child involved, who should be protected here, really? Shouldn't it be the child who should be protected, or shouldn't it be, you know, the adult who protect the child? In cases that I have observed, where a child has been sacrificed to preserve the family, the child ends up being the one who suffered the consequences. They're unable to have meaningful relationships later in life. Sometimes they're even unable to bear children Worst case scenario, they're unable to have sustainable relationships. They have issues, anger issues relating to men, and sometimes these anger issues cannot, easily be explained. But the root cause is something that has happened when they were still children. My advice, and I think this is a standing advice, this goes for all the parents. If there's anything that relates to a child, if a child has been molested, if a child has been violated, let there be no family meeting. This is not a matter. This is not a matter for a family meeting. This is a police matter. With this kind of matter, you go straight to the police, you go straight to the social workers or psychologists. And these people, the child protection unit, because, the child has been violated, the child have suffered violence in the hands of an adult. Report the matter. Let the matter be dealt with by officers who are capacitated to deal with such. Don't try and deal with this matter. Don't try. Consider this a warning. I'm saying don't even try. Once you know that a child has been violated by an adult, just report the matter. Forget about the stigmas. Don't even begin to think what this thing will do to your family, what will it do to your marriage, what will it do to this, Don't even begin to consider whether this man is a breadwinner. Don't even go there. For lack of a better word, you are dealing with the devil here. You are dealing with a monster here. Not to scare you, but if it's discovered later in life, or when this child ultimately decides to speak out, or when this child decides that, enough, I can't take this anymore, and decides on their own to go and report this matter, before authorities, go and report the father, the question will be, who else knows about this? Do you think you'll be happy when your name is mentioned that, no, I spoke to my mother about it and she did nothing? I spoke to my grandmother about it. She did nothing. I spoke to my brother, my sister about it, and they did nothing. So you see, you are as good, you are as guilty as the man who committed the crime. So my advice is report it. Let's go back to this other one that I also spoke to you about the mother who was terrorized by her own son. She could not disclose, she could not speak out for fear that, should people know, how would they, interact with her going forward? And she chose to keep this to herself. In other words, she suffered in silence. In other words, there was something that was bothering her, that was eating her up, but she could not open up for help, could not approach authorities to report the son. And this gave the son the upper hand. He could see, no, my mother wouldn't go out to seek for help, would be so embarrassed, so ashamed, to talk to people about what has been happening to her, because this is unheard of. So you see, Sometimes we suffer a great deal because we're thinking if we come out, if we go out and seek for help, people will know and people will talk bad about us. People would know, and we would lose the respect. We will be treated with shame. We would be treated, we'll be discriminated against. And we choose, therefore, to keep quiet so that we are treated well. But hey, who suffered at the end is us again. And with stigma, this is very true. Because we suffer, not necessarily of what people have said or are saying, but because of what we think people would say, because of what we think people would perceive us. Sometimes this cannot even be true. Maybe sometimes, we think people would look down on us, people would treat us with disrespect, and all that will level us. This is what is going on in our mind, and this qualifies to be, stigma. In actual fact, is the battle of the mind. Because most of what we're dealing with here is not what necessarily people are saying, but is what we think people will think towards us. People would say towards us. And sometimes people are so busy with so many other things. People are busy with their own lives that they do not even have time to think about your matter. So one way to deal with stigma, it's to seek for help, is to speak out. And this reminds me of a saying that a challenge, a problem once shared is half solved. The moment you come out, the moment you begin to talk about it, it's almost as good as it's being solved. The moment you come out, you'll be so amazed that there are so many people around you who have suffered the same fate, and they have been so afraid to come out. And you coming out, serve as a platform for other people to come out. And as many of us begin to come out and talk openly about what has happened to us, then solution then follows. Stigma can be beaten. Stigma for me, family, it's a mind game. It's a mind game because mostly we suffer in silence for fear that if we come out, people would begin to look at us differently. People are going to discriminate towards us. People are not going to interact with us the same way they did before. But this is what we are thinking. We are thinking this is how people will think. And quite often we are not right, we are very wrong. When you speak out, when you come out, people are sympathetic towards you. People feel not only pity for you, but they feel your pain. You'll be so surprised that that which you thought was a secret has only happened to you, only to find it has happened to many people. The same person who has terrorized you has terrorized many other people, but people have been afraid to come out. So as you come out, many people come out. So what you thought was going to discriminate against you actually works in your favor. That which we thought will be a source of stigma, people will stigmatize you, people would look at you and label you. On the contrary, people will then support you, stand with you. And as people stand with you, together, united, supporting one another, we're able to stand up, rise up, and able to beat this stigma that confront us. So, my message in short, my mother, my sister, my brother, my grandmother, my mother, all of us who are, victims of circumstances that are beyond us, because you don't ask to be victimized. You don't go out calling for these bad things to come upon you. But if you are a victim of any violation, you are not doing anyone a favor if you keep quiet. Come out, speak about these things. It is in speaking about them that we're able to succeed, that we're able to beat them up. At the end of the day, we'll emerge victorious. At the end of the day, we'll emerge conquerors. With this, I'd like to conclude, our today's sharing, and taking this time again to thank our parents for giving us this platform where we're able to reach out to you, family, to talk to you about these things that confront us as families, as a society, and as a community. Till next time, bye bye.